justice for all.
All right, you have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
Mr. Mayor, may we recognize?
You may.
I saw some on the agenda before the city wants to spend some on the iPods, Lynn. iPads, that's not on the consent, is it? Okay, just want to make sure.
Any proposed revisions? Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
Can you give me 1 second, Larry?
Mm-hmm.
What's been added in the revised agenda that we just got? Any changes?
Yeah, the revised agenda.
Is that it?
And a temporary part-time instead of a regular.
Yeah, the part-time permanent position was changed to a temporary part-time position as the other.
Mr. Mayor, under personnel, I'd like to move item 1 to consent.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I1, the approval of the advertisement to fill vacant position of laboratory technician in the wastewater division of public services as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revision?
Under personnel, I'd like to add item 2 to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I2, the approval of the advertisement to fill vacant position of deputy clerk in the city clerk's office as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do. Under personnel, item 3 to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I3, the approval of the hire of Mary Adams to fill a temporary part-time position of receptionist in the city clerk's office as presented on to the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is. And then under personnel, item 4 to consent.
Let me ask a question to the city attorney. Do I need to recuse myself on that, in your opinion?
Well, it's always up to you, but to be consistent, that would be the case.
I'm going to ask to keep that off consent, please.
Okay. So item 11I4 will remain on the regular agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I have no further revisions.
Are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, may we recognize?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, on the Roman numeral 11, item B, request consideration of administrative hearing officer's order to determine if 7 real property located throughout the city are a menace to the public health and safety of the community.
Yes. You proposing to move that to the consent agenda?
One of the items, yes, sir.
All right. Alderman Perkins has proposed revising the agenda to move item 11B1, the consideration of the administrative hearing officer's order to determine that 7 real properties located throughout the city are a menace to the public health and safety of the community, to the consent agenda as it's been reduced to writing. Alderman Perkins, have you seen this writing?
This is in my package.
This is from the city attorney.
No,
it's
it
not in your
was on
packet.
our desk today.
Okay, it meet all legal requirements. I don't need to see it. I hadn't read it.
All right, let me read it out loud just so it's clear. It is it would go in the record as a motion to approve the findings of fact to uphold the administrative hearing officer's orders that the structures located on the listed properties on the memo dated January 12, 2012 are in such an unsafe condition that they are a menace to public health and safety of this community as defined in section 54-52 of the city's Code of Ordinances, and to direct city staff to begin demolition and cleanup of the dilapidated structures utilizing city personnel in accordance with Section 21-19-11 of the Mississippi Code of 1972 annotated. Alderman Perkins, is that your proposed revision to the
It is,
agenda?
Mr. Mayor.
All right, and that has been reduced to writing, and I have presented the city clerk with a copy. Is there any objection to that proposed revision? That would be placing that matter as 11B1 on the consent agenda. Any objection? Alderman?
No
Alderman Dumas?
objection. No objection. Go
All right, any objection, any objection, any objection, seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
Mr. Mayor, under City Clerk Office, request ratification of emergency purchase of a heater for City Hall. Is that on the consent agenda, Mr. Outlaw?
It is not.
It
Wait.
is or is not?
I've got it not on the
I
consent
have it
agenda.
not too.
I have it.
I've got it, yes.
I have
Okay, you
it.
need to be clear. Ms. Brewer, I think that's one of those two that wasn't highlighted.
On the new agenda that should be in front of you, it's on consent.
Okay, I wasn't looking at the revised agenda.
Okay, my question, City Clerk, do we need to have any explanation in the minutes for the emergency purchase? That's what I'm thinking. City Attorney's not going to that answered my question. I thought so. So we need to get something in the minutes on that to justify the emergency purchase.
I think I put it, it's on the consent item.
It's in the packet, Alderman, and
okay.
if you would just take that writing and make it an
Right.
attachment to
That'd
the
be good.
consent item.
We're
be
fine
in
with
check.
that. We'll make that happen, okay?
All right, does that necessitate any proposed revision?
No, because it's actually what's in the packet.
And that'll be attached in the minutes.
That's correct.
All right, Alderman Perkins, do you have any further proposed revisions?
Mr. Mayor, under board business, Roman numeral 10F. Discussion and consideration of adding North Side Drive ditch to the drainage improvements to be made for the capital improvement project for 2012. I want that on the consent agenda. If there are no objections.
All right, the proposed revision is to place item number,
Yeah, revised agenda's missing a page.
item number 10F, discussion and consideration of adding Northside Drive ditch to the drainage improvements to be made for the capital improvement projects for 2012 as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Perkins, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection?
I just have a question. With it being included, it's shown on the spreadsheet on the back as Project 28. Is there anything different as far as our express capital improvement program? What exactly does that mean?
No. Well, right now, those items on that list are not in any sort of priority whatsoever. Now, you do have some that are ongoing,
So the
and
list
you have
is-
yet to fund your capital improvement program for this year.
Right, I understand. So the list that's shown, with it being number 28, that's assuming that we approve it to be included. That's just, it was not on this list prior to.
Right now,
Us
number
approving.
28 doesn't have any more or less standing
Got
than
it.
number 2.
Got it. I have no
Okay.
objection.
Any objection? Any objection?
Mr. Mayor, let me be clear on this North Side Drive ditch. Maybe I don't want it on the consent because I want this project done this year. If you know, in other words, if it's your interpretation that it's just going to be on the list, because the way I word this is not clear. So let's just keep it off the consent agenda and we'll get a motion on it.
Okay. All right, are there any further proposed revisions? Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Any further proposed revisions? Do I hear any further proposed revisions? All right, hearing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order. So moved. Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Carver. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the consideration of the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Do I hear any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. That will carry us to the approval of the minutes from December 6, 2011. Discussion.
Mayor, I move approval of the minutes from December 6, 2011.
Alderman Corey made a motion to approve of the minutes from the Regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville for December 6, 2011, as presented. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second? Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Corey's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We'll now move to announcements and comments by the members of the board. Prior to making a couple of new employee introductions, I just want to remind everybody that this Thursday, January 19th, we will be holding a regional meeting to discuss regional governance at the Toronto Convention Center at 6 o'clock. And I would now like to introduce our two newest members of the Starkville workforce. First, I would like to introduce Casey Johnson. It is my pleasure to welcome Casey Johnson as an operator in the Drinking Water Division of Public Services. Casey is originally from Haines City, Florida, and is a graduate of Haines City High School. He attended the University of Florida and graduated from Mississippi State University with degrees in animal science as well as landscape contracting. Before joining the City of Starkville, Casey was self-employed as a landscape contractor. Casey enjoys SEC football, Civil War history, target shooting, and being outdoors. He also enjoys cooking for his wife, Ashley. He and his wife are the owners of 3 dogs, Fats, Little Dog, and Buddy. They are members of Bell Green Methodist Church in Bell Green, Alabama. Please join me in welcoming Casey Johnson to the City of Starkville.
What time is it?
I would now like to introduce. Oh, wait, we get a pick. I'd now like to introduce Amy Vaughn. That's a new.
Ms. Vaughn is not here tonight.
Okay, so we'll schedule Ms. Vaughn's introduction for the next board meeting. That concludes my announcements this evening. We have 2 scheduled announcements by the members of the board. The first is from Alderman Sistrunk.
I just wanted to remind everybody that there is an ADA workshop that's being presented on January 26th at the Sportsplex. It will be conducted by people who are federal representatives who can help, who will make presentations about the most recent ADA guidelines that have been released. If you have questions, contact the city planner's office, Ben Griffith or Vicki in the city planner's office. And for those who are interested in such, it does qualify for continuing education credits, and it's quite possibly the most reasonable continuing education credits that any engineers, architects, that sort of professional will be able to find.
All right. Our final scheduled announcement this evening is a presentation by Alderman Perkins to the Employee of the Month.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Let me just take care of another housekeeping matter or that I would like to get done before I get to the presentation of Employee of the Month for January 2012. I want to say it's always good to have a lot of see all the public, members of the public present, and want to thank the Boy Scout and others that are here. And I would like to take this opportunity to recognize Reverend Thomas J. Rogers. And the reason I'm specifically recognizing him at this meeting is that Reverend Rogers was just recently honored by his church for his 9th pastor anniversary program, and I had the opportunity and privilege to be a part of that program. And Reverend Rogers is the pastor of the Josie Creek Missionary Baptist Church located on Highway 182 west in Starkville, and he is doing a very wonderful and magnificent job there. And of course, all our guests are very important, but I just want to call attention to Reverend Rogers in that a couple of Sundays ago that service was held at his church. Reverend Rogers, we would like for you to stand and be recognized. Mayor, as to the schedule comments, I would like to say to my colleagues and to the staff, to all of you who are assembled here this evening. It is with great privilege, pleasure, moment, and opportunity for me to present the Employee of the Month for the City of Starkville for January of 2012. This employee has been a steadfast and genuine member of the City of Starkville team for many years. This employee has worked in multiple facets of city business and as such has become highly knowledgeable about the workings of the city. That knowledge has been widely shared and has fostered personal growth and development through encouragement and expectation of excellence among the employees that ultimately have been and are under the supervision of this person. This person has been a reliable source of information and crucial data for the city as a whole and for the board and for me personally over those many years of service. This employee has established an honorable reputation and history of behavior that has provided the city of Starkville with notable mention among our peer cities and has lifted us up to help create a model of leadership worthy of emulation throughout the state. This employee has been with the city of Starkville since 1985. There have been many personal achievements relative to the role of leadership that is currently occupied. This employee continues to seek to improve and achieve greater certification and degrees within that area of expertise. This employee is well respected in our community and represents the city of Starkville in all aspects of life in a most commendable fashion. This employee has given many hours and resources to the community in order to make Starkville better and has contributed regularly through outside activities supporting sports ventures, school outings, and civic activities. This employee serves the mayor and board of aldermen with courage and loyalty and always seeks to improve the lives of those around her. Now, for this Employee of the Month, I have purchased a plaque that I'm going to present along with the mayor. And maybe we'll get Ms. Brewer to join us in this picture. And after I read the next sentence, we're going to make the presentation, and I will read the plaque. But moreover, I am pleased to announce the Employee of the Month for January 2012 is our esteemed City Clerk, Ms. Marquita Outlaw. Ms. Brewer, you want to join us up here? And this is a plaque that reads Ms. Marquita A. Outlaw, January 2012, Employee of the Month for the City of Starkville, Mississippi, presented by Roy A. Perkins, Esquire, Alderman Ward 6, and former Vice Mayor, January 17, 2012. Congratulations.
All right, yeah. As always, Alderman Perkins, thank you for going above and beyond the call of duty in presenting the Employee of the Month award.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very
Thank
well
you.
done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from members of the board? Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Brewer. Yeah, I just want to say something to the board, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Brewer, and our city attorney. Thank y'all for that mobile home being moved.
Is it gone?
Thank y'all so much. They were trying to move it this evening. Thank y'all.
Yes, sir.
It was a fight, but thank you. That's it. Thank you, board, for giving the go-ahead to get that done.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or
I just
comments?
like an employee matter that, got to know Miss Adams, and tonight we recontinued her contract. She is, about a year and a half, we all got to know her, and if you ever have to go to City Hall for anything, she is the very first face you see, and, if we're going down the road and we call in a lot, she's the very first person we talk to. So I personally, I just got to know her for the first time about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I'm glad the board took this matter into their own hands and kept Miss Adams around. She's done an excellent job, and we've got some good employees, and she's definitely a fine example. So I look forward to working with Miss Adams into the future.
Further questions or comments by the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. And at this time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alderman Ward 7. I want to recognize the Vice Mayor, Sid Trump, in Alderman Farm.
Good evening,
Mr.
Alan.
Turner?
The citizens have a few concerns. That we still wondering about the stun gun, and after the governor did what he done, we definitely want to know if the stun gun legal or not. That we would like for if chief can keep us updated. We don't know these people, and it's fighting in the community that these people are out, and we don't know anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments this evening?
My name is Jesse Lee Silvers. Northside Drive in Starkville.
My name is John Hill, Northside Drive in Starkville.
My name is Charles Johnson, Northside Drive in Starkville. What we come to talk about the ditch on Northside Drive, and we was wondering, you told us last year you cleaned it out, and it ain't got there yet. And so we just wondering what's the hold up on it. This ain't been cleaned out since 1984. So that's been 28 years. We done had 4 or 5 different wards, 5 mayors, and everybody telling them we not get it. So that's been 28 years ago. So we just wondering what's the problem? We ain't paying enough tax, or?
Yes, sir. And that project is up for discussion tonight. Right now, it is listed amongst 28 projects, and those are the 28 drainage projects that have been identified in the city. Currently, none of those projects have been prioritized over the other, although we do have some projects that are ongoing. And also, as of yet, the board has not made a determination as to how they're going to fund drainage improvements for the next year. Now, what I anticipate the board will discuss tonight is whether to move forward with $58,000 in improvements of that channel, and that would be pulled from the street and drainage budget for the next year.
How you say that, 28? How you had that?
There's 28 drainage projects that have currently been identified by the board and placed on a list for improvements. And those projects are just based on the city engineer going out, sometimes at the request of a board member, doing an analysis of what issues there are with a particular ditch, pipe, or other type of drainage channel, coming back with a cost estimate. And right now, the way the process has worked in years past is those projects remain on that list until they're completed. And then each year, the board, in making their determinations for street improvements and drainage improvements, will make a determination as to which of those projects can be funded in any given year.
Well, Northside Drive should be on the top, shouldn't it?
Right now, there's no top or bottom. There's just 28 projects that are.
28 projects, so, well, out of 28 years, I'm pretty sure we ought to be somewhere down the road. We ought to be on the top anyway.
Yes, sir.
Just got clean out with, who was the mayor, Jesse Green? The day before.
So long, I
I
forgot.
think he was the mayor when he come in there and clean out. We had a storm in 83. And they dammed all these streets up. Then he come in there and open, handed out in 84. And ain't nothing done to the since. That was 28 years ago.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm pretty sure Northside Drive ought to be hidden somewhere up on the top. It should not be on the bottom.
Yes, sir.
But, didn't the board tell us that Northside Drive was gonna be the first thing on the agenda for 2012? The board said that.
Well, I don't think the board to this point has made representations as to exactly which of those projects they're going to fund this year. Again, they will be considering that one tonight, and they'll also be considering general drainage projects at a later time this year.
Let me go do something, cause back there, just washing all my backyard out. The water stand was ditching, almost mosquitoes, old black flies and things be flying up in the house. So it needs to do something.
Yeah, and the project should be very helpful when it's done. Now, one of the things that's going to have to be accomplished when it comes time to do it is each of the landowners that live adjacent to the ditch are going to have to grant the city an easement so that they can go back there and do the work. And then what'll happen with that project is the city engineer has a program where they can come in and actually do some resloping of the channel where the erosion has become particularly bad. And then they come in and lay down a grass matting, which fills the side of that channel with vegetation again so it doesn't erode like it's come to do. And that project, in total, the city engineer estimates is about a $58,000 project.
And the board is also aware of it, that it's the baddest ditch at the city limit.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the board, I believe just about every member has come out there and looked, because it was part of our bus tour 2 years ago where they actually looked at the channel. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I be recognized?
You may.
The easements already have done. The only one we missing is the one from, Mr. Kemp, we missing one easement. And that's the one from the church. All the easement from the residents, they're all taken care of. They're all in.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a blessed evening.
You too. Do we have any further citizen comments this evening?
Good evening to the board, good evening, Mayor, and good evening to my Alderman, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Thank you.
I'm just making a few comments, and I would just like for y'all to know. We just had citizens to walk up and down and say that their ditches need filled. Y'all have had work sessions, y'all have been up here all year. I'm talking to everybody, you know, you have been up here all year. Is this fair? This is a new year we're going into, and we just started. Yesterday, everybody marched for Dr. King. You know what? I believe Dr. King said stay at home. That's what I believe he was saying, because we have not gained anything. Not anything. We're out of jobs here. Education, which remains priority around the world. We're not doing anything for, well, we're doing for Healthy Starkville. Yeah, we're taking part in that. But we're Healthy Starkville, these guys that just left. Their children, imagine, grandchildren growing up in fields. Because of ditches that's here in Starkville that need to be fixed, and they have to come and beg. And like he said, they pay taxes. What if they refuse to pay taxes? I would just like to tell y'all, take time and look at what you're doing. I just want you to know, election time is coming. Election time is coming, and each time I'm gonna get up from now on and remind everybody that election time is coming. But first of all, do what you gotta do and quit being like we are. Education, to me, is the most priority thing that we got here in Starkville. We hadn't even talked, about it as a board. We hadn't tried to do anything. All we try to do, and I have nothing to say about Mississippi State, but they're taking care of their own out there. We need to take care of our county, Octavia Hall County, Starkville, Mississippi. I'm still asking for you. Look on the other side of town, over by Rolling Hills. We have no developments over there. We only have apartments that's gonna come and cause more confusion from the little road that goes zigzag. That's what we're gonna have. I would just like y'all to pray about that. Think about it. This is 2012. Please do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Do we have any further citizen comments this evening? Any further citizen comments? Do we have any further citizen comments this evening? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances, and we have one public appearance scheduled this evening, and that is by Parks Commission Chairman Dan Moreland and Parks Director Matthew Wright.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. We're going to do things a little different tonight. We provide you a lot of information in your packet. We want to introduce our new employee. Started in December, and then Mr. Moreland's got a special recognition he wants to make, and then we'll answer any question that you might have. And that's Herman Peters. He would stand. He's our new sports coordinator. He's from the big city of Shabuta, Mississippi. He attended Meridian Community College, East Mississippi Community College, and Belford University. Before joining Starkville Parks, he worked at West Lowndes High School as an assistant athletic director, boys and girls head basketball coach, head softball coach, head boys and girls track coach. He was named Coach of the Year for 3 years for Mississippi High School Association. Most recently, he worked as assistant facility manager, fitness instructor, and personal trainer for YMCA in Columbus, Mississippi. He's certified CPR instructor, self-defense instructor, personal trainer, group fitness instructor, and is recognized by the National Federation of High Schools as a level 1 coach, which is the highest that you can receive. He's a past member of the board of directors of Trinity Retirement Home, past member of the board of directors of Area 5 Special Olympics, and in February we placed on the board of directors the Life and Enrichment Program at MUW. When Herman is not working or busy with community involvement, he enjoys working out, singing, and playing the piano, which I didn't know. So please join me in welcoming Herman Peters, the sports coordinator at Starkville Parks and Recreation.
If y'all wondering how Herman got to Starkville, Katrina washed him up here. And we also told him if he screwed up, the tide would come in, but the tide would also go out. So that's what we get from Herman on here. We're glad to have him. I've got something I'd like to read here on behalf of the Parks Commission. We would like to recognize Mr. Walter Williams for his dedication and service to the Starkville Parks and Recreation Department for 50 years of service. In 1962, Coach Dog Owens reached out to Mr. Williams to create activities for the youth on the west side park. Mr. Williams had agreed and has been part of the development ever since. He has been a field supervisor at Sutter's Field, which probably none of y'all even know where Sutter's Field is. West Side Field, McKee Park, and Sportsplex. He has been involved in the summer youth work program, summer feeding program, and the youth afternoon play hour in the mid-'80s. In the 90s, he was a pool manager and supervisor for the youth baseball at West Side Park, and he was a supervisor at Henderson and Armstrong Middle School for adult volleyball basketball. He is currently one of our gym supervisors at Sportsplex Mr. Williams is also instrumental in developing and expanding the park activities, and we would like to honor him with this plaque for 50 years. Now, you know, as I'm sure all of y'all that are married has said that we're gonna do this thing 50-50. The first 50 years, we're gonna do what I say, the next 50, we'll do what our wife says. We'd made that deal with Mr. Williams, we'd all be working for it today. This plaque says appreciation plaque presented to Mr. Walter Williams for 50 years of great care, time, and dedication given by the Starkville Parks and Recreation.
I just make one statement.
Yes.
I'm proud to be here tonight because I see 3 of my former students, and maybe I did have a little influence on you, Mr. Perkins and Mr. Vaughn. Let's continue to do the good work you're doing.
Yes, sir. Well, I can assure you, you had plenty of influence on me, Mr. Williams.
Well, we won't blame him for that. We don't have a whole lot in our packet tonight, other than to present to y'all. You have it in your packet. The audit, we went through our second audit, and it turned out good. Found no discrepancies on it at all. We've got one thing in here that somebody, I don't know where you've seen it or not, where Matthew had something put on his credit card and reimbursed. And what that was we had to have 2 computers, and you know, every computer company, every phone company's got a deal. At this particular time, the deal was that an individual could buy them cheaper than a company or school or whatever there. So he put it on his credit card, and then it was reimbursed because it was cheaper to buy it for an individual. So he didn't, we caught him on that, but other than that, we had good check. But if y'all got any questions, we'd be sure, we'd like to answer them, or whatever you'd like to do. But I don't see any need of just going over item by item on here, since you had it in your packet.
Any questions or comments for Chairman Moreland or Mr. Wright? Alderman Vaughn.
I know I probably didn't tell a lot of it, but the J.L. King tennis court, it was resurfaced. They redid that, and a lot of you need to go see the new lights that we got. Mr. Kemp and Dan and Mr. Matthew, we have new lights down at J.L. King Park, and they're very pretty.
When the weather breaks, we're gonna have a ribbon cutting over there, if we can borrow enough money to turn the lights on. But the electric department did a good job in putting the lights out, and we were real pleased with them, and we're gonna have a little form on turning on the lights when the weather breaks, and we have that. But you can see all over that side of town when those lights are on, and they're more economical than the others. They burn, how much, Matthew?
Well, no, Mr. Kemp can tell you probably more than I can, but there was 138-40 bulbs in the old ones, and we have, I believe, 62 or 65 in the newest.
Further questions or
I
comments?
just want to thank you all.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Glad you got away early tonight.
All right, that will carry us to public hearings, and we've got a bunch of them. Our first public hearing will be our third public hearing on item number OR-11-01. Mr. Griffith?
Mr. Mayor, item OR-11-01 is an ordinance repealing and replacing the charter permitted uses and associated definitions. Since the last board meeting on January 3rd, the car title payday loan land use on the chart has been revised to reflect the board's desire for permitted use in M1 zoning districts and as a conditional use in C2 zoning districts. A note referencing Table 5 of the form-based code for land uses within the transect districts has been included on the chart and in the body of the ordinance. A large 11 by 17 inch version of the chart of permitted uses has been provided in your packets for ease of reference.
Questions or comments from the members of the board? Do we have any questions or introductory comments from the members of the board? Any questions or comments from the members of the board before we begin the public comment portion of the public hearing? Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll now move to the public comment portion of the public hearing. In keeping with standard practice, we will hear in alternating fashion from those for and against the proposed ordinance. beginning with anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, and then moving to anyone wishing to speak against. Each person will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Each side will be allotted a total of 15 minutes. We'll continue going back and forth until either all the time allotted to each side has expired or until no one wishes to speak. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance?
Good evening, my name is Alderman, County Ward. Now, I would need for you all to explain this to me because people get mad with me when everything gets screwed up. Like, what do this ordinance entail? I mean, what y'all saying to the citizens with this ordinance? Nobody can tell me what this ordinance entail.
Mr. Turner, we'll use this time for public comment, and then after we're through with the public comment, I'll offer the board members an opportunity to respond to any questions that were raised.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's legitimate. I think it's, Mr. Turner, hold your place there. I think it's legitimate. It's a public hearing. He came up here as a public hearing, as a citizen, as a taxpayer. He asked a question, so he doesn't have to be, needs to be cast aside till a later time in the meeting. I mean, he has the right to ask that question if anybody can answer it.
Sure, and should any board member wish to respond right now to his inquiry, I'll certainly recognize you.
I'll answer. Mr. Turner, this is we're just revising our chart of permitted uses, which in every piece of property you have zoning that's associated with that property, and then there are certain uses that are associated with that zoning. And that's the way it currently is. Our current land use chart of permitted uses is 16 pages, Ben, I believe. So it's extremely difficult to read and understand. What we've actually done with this is boil it down so that it's one sheet, so that it's much easier to understand. And not only that, but we offer definitions for each line item so that it's very clear by definition what each one of these things are. So it's actually cleaning up an antiquated chart that we've been working under for quite some time and making it much easier for the staff and developers in this community to understand what they can and can't do.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance? Anyone now wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak on the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, that will conclude the public comment portion of this public hearing, and we'll move back into final comments from the members of the board. Do we have any final comments before concluding this public hearing? Any final comments?
I got one question. It was brought up last time about the something that's our next public hearing about the T-zones. Now that's not adopted, so that shouldn't be included in this now, right?
That's right. And there's a note on the bottom that says, please refer to Table 5 of the form-based code for land uses located within Transect districts.
So that would take care of that, and it wouldn't have to be revised again.
Yeah. So on the actual land use map, it'll be designated per T-zone or per land use in its typical fashion, and then they both will have their own. But the good thing is, this chart now reflects the divisions of that land use chart as well. So they're much easier.
Any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments by the members of the board? All right, seeing none, that will conclude this, the third public hearing on item number OR 11-01. We'll now move to our third public hearing on item number OR 11-02. Mr. Griffith?
Mayor and Board, item OR 11-02 is an ordinance amending the city's official zoning map and establishing a form-based code for the corridors connecting downtown Starkville to the MSU campus. I present the following for your consideration, which are included in your packets, which is part of the public record. a staff report summarizing the attached items, a draft ordinance, 3 letters of support, Appendix A for privilege licenses and building permits issued within the study area, Appendix B for sales and listing information from the multiple listing service for the study area, Appendix C listing the affected parcel numbers and property owners and those located within the 160-foot buffer area. A rezoning map as well as a large 11 by 17-inch version has been provided in your package for ease of reference. And finally, a copy of the proposed form-based code.
Questions or comments from the members of the board? Do we have any questions or comments at this time from the members of the board? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion of the public hearing. And do not put y'all through that explanation again. We'll keep the practice for this public hearing the same as the last one. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance?
Name's Alderman Ward 7 again. I'll need for you to do the same to this order. Explain it so that we understand. You try to do less work and you put a burden on the citizens trying to understand what you're talking about. What does this ordinance contain?
Alderman Dumas.
Mr. Perkins, Mr. Turner, this is a much more complex ordinance than the one previous. This is actually a rezoning of a large part of the city, and it includes changing our land use from a given right to develop by use. So if you have a parcel right now, you can develop, whether it's residential, commercial, manufacturing, to changing that so that you develop by form and by use. So it's actually better for the developer because it gives much broader development rights to the developer than he currently has. And so it's a developer-friendly ordinance, but it's also a city staff-friendly ordinance in that it's very prescriptive and that it's very cut and dry and clear what's required in these areas to develop. And so it adds no real detail than what we currently have, because we require setbacks and heights and landscaping and signage and those type things, and we still require that. This just increases the uses and it changes the form of what's allowable as well as far as the development right is concerned.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance? Anyone now wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak on the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, will move back into final comments from the members of the board. Any concluding comments from the members of the board? Any comments?
I got a question for Alderman Loomis. What would be the route if a developer were to come in town or live in another state? What would be the route they would find out about this, and maybe it's transit districts and things like that? Would this be when they applied with the planning or the building department? Is that
Right,
would they be
yeah.
informed?
They would be. And so it's just as they currently do. This will be changed on the land use map, so it will be shown online, and then all this information will be online. And then I think one of the real benefits of this, and Ben could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think having this document then as a very succinct document that could be given to any developer interested that tells everything about that individual parcel, we now have that. You know, instead of having to dig through different volumes of regulations and codes. I think that's a real benefit. But yes, it would be here with the building department.
And just with any other, this would be just like any other zoning change, right? We'll have to define whether there's been a change of character in the neighborhood.
That's
gonna be
right.
our-
Change character and public need.
And there's been quite a bit of substantial development. I think out of the 89, maybe 40 or 50 have been.
Yeah, and that's one of the real benefit, and I'll talk about that when we get to the actual part of it. But yeah, there's substantial change.
Any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments? Seeing none, that will conclude the third public hearing on item number OR 11-02. That will take us to our final public hearing of the evening, and that is a public hearing on the adoption of a condominium ordinance. And this is a matter that I have brought to the board's attention, and it comes about because right now we do not have any ordinance framework that speaks directly to condo development. The way condominium subdivisions are treated right now is just like the subdivision of land. That means that they must go through a quite onerous process. They must go through our development review process and then go through a preliminary plating process, which requires them to make an appearance and gain approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission, make another appearance and gain approval from the Board of Aldermen, and then after their preliminary plat is approved and the infrastructure of the property is in, they must then go through the same process again. Now, proceeding from development review to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then ultimately the Board of Aldermen. This is a process that can take months to complete. And the objective behind this ordinance is to cut red tape that I view as unnecessary. There is a major difference in condominium subdivision and the subdivision of land. Most notably, land is not typically subdivided in condominium development. You're dealing with the subdivision of building space. And recognizing what condominium development is, I think it is much more like the traditional building process, which is not required to go through a preliminary plating process before two public bodies and then a final process before two public bodies. Now, where all of this matters more than just red tape, in having conversations with members of the building and development community about how we can make our processes more user-friendly and more conducive to economic activity, one of the consistent concerns that I hear is that it is as difficult now to get financing for development projects in the private market as it has ever been. Oftentimes, financing is contingent upon success in these processes that we have that can take months. In that time, a developer can have another project in another place that does get funded, and that makes a project here less of a priority because they're cutting through the red tape, or for any number of reasons that they could ultimately decide to abandon that process. So having met on numerous occasions with our staff to discuss the different issues associated with this, we have come up with an ordinance that hopefully will allow not only for continued orderly and well-planned development that ultimately leads to the highest and best use of land in the city of Starkville, but also have a process that is user-friendly and allows developers the best opportunity to get a condominium project financed and done in the city of Starkville. And I do think this is a place that's ripe for growth and development in our market. By virtue of the fact that we are a college town, we have a natural market, and we're seeing increased demand in this community for retirement homes and second homes. And oftentimes to the person that's in the market for a retirement home or a second home, a condominium is appealing because they want the home, but they don't want the maintenance of the yard to go with it. So I think we are uniquely positioned, and I want our processes to put us in the best position to capitalize on the position that we're in. Questions and comments from the members of the board? Do I hear any questions or comments from the members of the board? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion of the public hearing, and we'll conduct this in the exact same fashion as the two we just conducted. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance?
Ward 7, the name's applicant. We're glad this election year. We need some settle-minded people. It's sad. I mean, you mean well, but then everybody needs to understand what you're doing. There's no need to have a bunch of ordinance, and we're not keeping up with half of the ordinance that we already have. That don't make too good sense. Let's try to work together so we can get something done. And let's remember, and now the governor has released some people that should be in prison. Let's keep that in mind.
Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Seeing no one, is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance?
Mayor, I would like to come forward and say I do have a problem with that because I hadn't read up on that ordinance. Is it on the website now?
It is supposed to be up on the website. Is a copy of the ordinance up on the website? Yes, it is up on the website.
When was it put there?
Was it published Friday? Friday.
Because I guess somehow I must have missed that. I did get the others, but I somehow have missed that. Because this is a very important factor that we should be dealing with right now. But since it's the first public hearing, maybe I can go back and read it and come back and say what I have to. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And should you ever have any trouble with it on the website, please feel free to come to the office and we'll get a printed copy to you as well. Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak on the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone now wishing to speak? Seeing no one, that will conclude the public comment portion of our public hearing, and we will move back into a final opportunity for comment from the members of the board. Do we have any concluding comments by the members of the board? Any concluding comments? Any comments by the members of the board? Seeing none, that will conclude the first public hearing on the proposed condominium ordinance. And that will take us now to the consideration of the approval of item number OR 11-01. Discussion.
I'm missing a page in my agenda.
Yeah, they're all missing a page.
I'm missing a page.
Everybody missing a page.
Yeah, I think everybody's missing a page. Do you have your original agenda copy?
Yeah, I've got it.
I do. And Mayor?
If not, we can recess and print the
Mr. Mayor, I
page.
move approval.
All right. Hold on one second. Alderman Dumas has made a motion to approve ordinance number 2012-01.
Yes.
All right, I've got 1101 in the packet, and I've got a blank in the motion.
Mayor, 1101 is a file number, it's not an ordinance, that's an internal file number that we use for P&Z.
This is the first ordinance of 2012? Okay. All right. Alderman Dumas has made a motion to approve of ordinance number 2012-01, repealing and replacing the chart of permitted uses found in Appendix A, Article 8, Section M, and the definitions found in Appendix A, Article 2 of the city's Code of Ordinances as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas' motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. Get the next one ready for me. The next matter on the agenda is the discussion and consideration of evaluating the RFQ submissions and selecting a firm to assist the city in a redistricting process. Alderman Dumas.
I've got a question perhaps for the city attorney. Is there any part of this process that requires an attorney? Because I see there's some packets that have an attorney as part of the team, or there's some that don't.
Yeah, I need to look at that precise issue. From the Slaughter proposal, it appears that it does not, so long as it gets to the DOJ and hits all of the specs. But I need to look at that to give you a more precise answer.
Okay. Well, because of that, and I'm not clear on that myself, I move we table this item until we can get that resolved, because I need to understand by myself of what, as far as what's needed, because some teams have attorneys, some don't. Some are demographers, some are attorneys, and I would like to know, I would like to have that answer from the city attorney of what's actually, to get us from this point to pre-clearance before making a decision on a consultant.
Alderman Dumas, are you making a motion or making a statement?
I'm making a motion to table this item.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to table the current item for discussion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. By rule, we'll move directly into a vote. All those in favor of Alderman Dumas' motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 3 in favor with 4 against, this measure fails. We'll move back into discussion on the item. Discussion. Alderman Carter.
First of all, thank you last time for tabling it the first time and giving us the opportunity to look at it. And with that, I'd like to move approval of the of approving the Golden Triangle Planning and Development District as the agency assisting us in the redistricting process.
Alderman Carver has made a motion to approve of the proposal submitted by the Golden Triangle Planning and Development District to assist the city in its redistricting process. Alderman Carver, is that your motion?
Yes, I'd also like to state I want to put in a not to exceed amount of $10,000.
Okay, Alderman Carver has made a motion to approve of the Golden Triangle Planning and Development District to aid the city in its redistricting process for an amount not to exceed $10,000. Alderman Carver, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Carver, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Alderman Sistra.
Because there are some questions about this, I'd like to amend Alderman Carver's motion to include that any legal fees paid to the city attorney are not subject to the contractual cap that we have with the city attorney. And that GTPDD will provide 3 maps from which the Board of Aldermen will select one to submit.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to amend Alderman Carver's motion to stipulate that any legal fees paid by the city in accordance with the redistricting process will not be paid to the city attorney in accordance with the redistricting process will not be subject to the contractual cap that exists within the contract between the city attorney and the city of Starkville. And further, Alderman Sistrunk has added the stipulation that the GTPDD will provide 3 maps from which the Board of Aldermen will select one. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
And the city attorney has something he'd like to say.
Mayor, I would like to add one more thing to that, and respectfully request that, looking at the GDPDD application, it's ambiguous to me whether the work product for judicial preclearance will come from them or come from me. If it does come from me, I would request that I get the bond rate of $190 an hour, which would govern judicial preclearance under the bond issuance, if we were doing it under that route. Plus, it's still a substantial discount from the Butler Snow Quarry rate in the application package by $50 an hour.
All right, the city attorney has recommended language for a potential revision. Do with that as you choose.
Question on that, if I may, or do we need to?
You calling question on Alderman Sistrunk's?
No, I've got a
amendment?
question, just a
Oh.
general, I'm not calling a question.
Okay.
Will that fee then go toward our city attorney's cap with us?
No, that's my motion.
That was, so it's not only in the cap of Alderman Carver's motion of $10,000, but it also does not go towards our annual cap with our city attorney.
Good.
So it's both.
No, under,
They can't hire him as a sub-consultant, in other words.
They could,
That would include that and
couldn't they?
put those funds.
they can hire anybody they want to do their legal work.
At whatever rate they choose.
And just to be clear, I mean, these were RFPQ, RFQs. So what we're gonna be voting on is to start the negotiation with who we choose tonight. And if we tell, I mean, if in our negotiation, we tell them that we have put a cap on that and to, I guess, to make sure that they respond to us as to what they're providing us, whether that cap will include the demographer or the attorney or whatever.
I will say that Alderman Carver's proposed cap is 2 times the amount that was discussed in the proposal or the request for qualifications that we received. So it does build some cushion in for them to hire an attorney, hire someone to coordinate meetings, that sort of thing.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
my concern is the vice mayor offered in her amendment that the Golden Triangle Planning Development District have to provide 3 maps. I mean, what's the relevancy and the intent of directing them to provide a certain number of maps? It looked like we're trying to dictate the redistricting process to the Golden Triangle Planning Development District. You know, this motion is getting a little too weighty here. The Golden Triangle Planning Development District does not need to be told how many maps. You know, in other words, you know, that's why they're the consultant. We're not the experts; they are. So, you know, we need to defeat this amendment and get back to the original motion because, you know, I mean, they may deem it as just 1 map. They may deem it as 2 maps. I mean, that's not for us to say. I mean, as to how the city attorney gets paid, you know, I mean, that's already been governed how he's get paid. We already have a contract on how the city attorney gets paid, so I mean, we don't need no motion on the city attorney. But we don't need no amendment saying how many maps that the Golden Triangle Planning Development needs to provide us. So what we need to do, we need to defeat this amendment and pass the original motion that's on the floor from the gentleman from 1. So I encourage the board to defeat the amendment from that was offered by the vice mayor, and let's pass the motion that was adopted, that was offered by the gentleman from 1.
Further discussion? Any? Alderman Sistrunk?
I think, I think I'd like to offer some reasoning behind the request for 3 maps. And part of that is that, as many of you know, we have a somewhat, we have a bit of a history with GTPDD. And to avoid the appearance that they are providing a map that in any way disadvantages those of us who may not have been viewed as supportive of GTPDD in the past, I believe that asking for 3 maps allows us to make a selection that takes them out of that equation.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
3 maps may not be proper, may not be sufficient. It may not be something that can be provided, depend upon their expert advice. I mean, of course, I think it's very intrusive for us to tell an expert at this point in time, when we're talking about the request for qualifications, as to how many maps they need to give us. What's before us tonight is selecting a firm, and then once we can select the firm, then we can get the firm here, and then we can decide what we as a board want to do. But I think it's just too presumptuous at this point to presume what this group may do or what they may not do. So I think this is a very important vote. I am of strong opinion that we need to defeat this amendment. There's no need to give a directive to the Golden Triangle Planning Development District just because upon its prior appearances or requests or involvements with matters and things involving the city of Starkville. So I think that that's not proper to do, in my opinion. So I am requesting again that we not give a directive through a motion as to how many maps. That's the problem with the first maps come up here. They walk up in this room, all these maps hang up on the wall. It's all over the place. I mean, that was the problem with the first set of maps. So let that group, if the board passes this motion, decide. Let that group decide how many maps they want to bring in. And as to the matter of the city attorney, that does not need to be included in the motion. He already knows how much he's going to get paid. The city knows that too. We got a contract. So so we need to defeat this amendment and get back to the original motion that was offered by the gentleman from 1, and we need to pass that motion that was offered by the gentleman from 1. That's how we need to proceed, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion?
Call the question.
All right, Alderman Sistrunk has called the question. Is there any objection to voting on Alderman Sistrunk's motion at this time? Any objection to voting? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Sistrunk's motion to amend, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 3 in favor with 4 against, this measure fails. We'll move back into discussion on the main motion offered by Alderman Carver, and that is the selection of GTPDD with a cap of $10,000. Further discussion? Any further discussion on Alderman Carver's motion? Any further discussion? Alderman Court.
Yeah, I just want to speak to this motion a little bit. Now, I did vote for the proposed amendment because I like the idea of it at least giving us a couple of different options to look at and choose from. However, I do intend to vote against the actual motion, and I may be in the minority in doing this. I remember that when we discussed the idea of seeking proposals from outside groups, one of the ideas behind that was to try to avoid the potential for political biases and other factors that can have an effect on this process. And it just concerns me a little bit that we go with an agency that is in the city limits and is funded by the city and is therefore has at least that potential to be biased in some way. Now, I do think the GTP does good work, but if we're going to go with a local group, then we could just save the city money and do it ourselves. Because if we go with a local group, then we take away the advantage that we ourselves mentioned of seeking outside agencies that aren't familiar with us, this city, and would therefore come to the table with fresh ideas and an unbiased view. So that's just my opinion on it.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman Carver.
I did second that, but I was listening to Alderman Perkins. He had a really good point, and when we get through this process, we're going to come out with a finished product that's a collaborative effort. There's going to be input from each and every one of us through the whole process, and not only that, but the citizen groups and all invested parties with this. So we're going to come out with one map. It's going to be the right map, and that's going to be done through all the work of the mayor and the board and all the input we're going to have into that. So with that, I'd like to go on and have the vote, please.
Are you calling the question?
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection to moving into a vote at this time? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on Alderman Carver's motion. All those in favor of Alderman Carver's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the approval of item number OR 11-02. Discussion.
Mayor,
Alderman Corey.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2012-2, amending city's official zoning map and code of ordinances by adoption of a form-based code entitled Downtown MSU Corridors Code for areas which include portions of Mississippi Highway 182, Main Street, University Drive, Lampkin Street, and Russell Street.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve ordinance number 2012-02, the city's official zoning map and code of ordinances by adoption of a form-based code entitled Downtown MSU Corridors for areas which include portions of Mississippi Highway 182, Main Street, University Drive, Lampkin Street, and Russell Street as presented. And Alderman Corey, it looks like you have more for your...
It has also been recommended that I include a finding of fact with that motion, which I have in writing.
All right. And in addition to the material that's printed, Alderman Corey has also reduced a finding of fact to writing, and I will read this to you before presenting it to the city clerk. This is all based on a finding of fact in the staff report and otherwise before the board tonight, and based on the board's own familiarity with the area that the corridors affect. The area that the corridors affected by this ordinance have changed to such an extent to justify the proposed rezoning, and that there is a public need for the proposed rezoning. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Corey's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is a report on the installation of fiber and technology implementation plans for the city of Starkville. This report's going to be made by Mr. Kemp and Mr. Clinton.
All right, Mayor and Board, I appreciate the opportunity tonight. As the agenda says, we're going to update you on our fiber and AMI projects that are currently underway in the city. And although as we look at them, you'll see 2 different projects, but as we go to the end result, they're very much integrated into one overall technology improvement. And I think, as Joel will talk about, it creates even further opportunities for the city as well. When we looked at the Starkville Electric Department, I guess our goal or our focus is to make sure that we provide a safe, reliable, and affordable electricity. I think what we're talking about here tonight is the start of a system that puts us in place that we can look to address some current needs, but also look to the future, what we're going to be needing out into the future. I think if we look at basically what this will do, it will allow us to help control rates. It will maintain and improve our system reliability, and it will also provide a customer interface, which is very, very important as we look for other program offerings as we go forward in the areas of conservation, rate changes and things that individual consumers might need, but ultimately we come back and help the department and the city as well. As you'll remember, last year, the city moved to a time of day, seasonal time of day rate on our wholesale. Currently, that's the way we're being billed by TVA, which it reflects a closer real-time pricing based under time of day and season. It is nearly flat today, but as we look to the future, the difference between on and off, we anticipate will get larger. And this system will allow us to actually take advantage of that to the benefit of our customers and provide service as well. I guess I'll go through some quick slides just to give you an update on kind of I'm going to start with the fiber system. And I did bring two examples of what we'll be talking tonight about. This is what we consider ADSS cable. It's basically fiber cable that's currently in place now. I'll be glad to pass it around. And if you want to look at it, but this one actually has has 5 different, I guess you'd say, cables in it, bundles, and each bundle has 12 fibers in it, to give you an idea. That's our existing, and then the other one I'll be talking about is our optical overhead ground wire, which is this one that was on the agenda tonight. We hope to get started fairly soon. This one has 4 bundles. And it has 12 fibers for a total of 48. Both of these, as we get in the presentation, I'll show how they fit together. I thought it'd be interesting right now to kind of give you a snapshot of what our existing fiber is today. And then this location is our operations center, our substation to the northeast of Starkville. This runs down 182. This would be the water facilities, and then our office, City Hall, and then the Starkville Electric Department. That's where this type fiber is currently. We use it for communication back between that, and but that kind of gives you an idea of currently what we have. Now, what our intent is to do over time is to make a complete fiber ring all the way around Starkville, following our transmission system. Phase 1 will replace the overhead shield wire with this optical ground wire. And we'll start at the northwest substation, come down 182. That would be the northwest substation, and then eventually wind up at our southwest substation. This becomes the backbone of our fiber system. It is for speed. It's kind of a lot of the data from the electric department and utilities. We'll be using this for our SCADA system to monitor our substations. We also will have the capability of doing some TV security so we can monitor that. But as we go forward, as I said earlier, the ability to manage our load where the voltage reduction, I think, is very important. This provides real-time pricing, real-time data back to the system for us. And on the proposal tonight, as we go forward, I'll get into more detail, is to take down the overhead ground wire that's currently there and place it with this. Now, part of this first phase project is to extend from the southwest substation and bring fiber up to the sportsplex, which is another big initiative that what we want to do is bring that out and then put a junction at that location, which would be a possible entry from the city into the overall fiber. Okay. Now this is kind of the implementation of phase 1. And I'll go over it real quickly. I think you have a new deal. Here's tonight, based on the consent to go out and actually get some contractor to install this. The cable was ordered in November. We expect it to be delivered in April of this year, and construction starting in March of this year. We're looking for about a 60-day window to do that, actually install the cable. And then we have about 2 months worth of fiber splicing, terminating, testing the equipment itself, which is a big part when you get into fiber. It's more than just pulling it. We have to light it up and then make determinations. So our plan is to have all of phase one completed by the end of July, August timeframe, to kind of give you a reference of how that would work. Our next project, which would be a continuation of that, which would be in another year's budget, this was in this year's budget to actually implement Loop Phase 1. We'll move from this substation and then go back to the east part of town, go by Mississippi State University, and I'll come back to that point as well, and then continue the loop back to the substation, which completes a full ring around Starkville. This is going to allow Mississippi State collaboration with their generation project. They will actually need access through this location to get power back on. So here again, it's another collaborative effort with the university and very important for the overall project on their side of things. But anyway, this is the fiber. And as I said earlier, this becomes the backbone. It will serve on our SCADA system, but also becomes a redundant or backhaul for our AMI system. And when I talk about utilities, I'm going to talk a little bit about from Doug's benefit as well. I talk from the utilities, especially on the AMI, because the other utilities are tied as well. And when we get into AMI, it takes it down the next level. This would be the infrastructure that would allow us to read or provide data two ways with each customer that we have in the city. Yes, sir.
What's AMI?
Automatic meter infrastructure.
Okay.
And really, this kind of gets to the point that we're going to move to a radio. We've decided that. We've done a lot of work. We've vetted various options, and we're down to more of a radio mesh system.
Yes, sir.
That's what we plan to go to. And it's going to be 900 megahertz is what we'll be looking from a radio. And this provides the infrastructure that we'll be installing into the meters on individual houses and then getting feedback to our system, and then we can feed to theirs as well. When we look at this, it's not only the electric side, it also deals with the water. And as we deploy this, we'll be working very closely together so that we move through taking, in a step process. And I show this first because this would be our first step. And the map is turned sideways just because of the way it's, what'd you call this, Joel?
Starkville is a vertical town.
Vertical town. But you'll look, here's the fiber backbone that's inserted in this area. But when you look at it, each of those represents a collector. And I'll show you an example of a collector. But a collector, what we're planning for is about a 4,000-foot radius. And so that kind of gives you an idea of where we put a radio receiver collector. We collect data from all the meters inside this circle to become to that collector. Then it'd be transmitted back to SED. And actually, we would be getting real-time usage. That's where our bills would be generated. But also at the same time, we'd be able to generate to the homeowners and businesses in these locations what their usage data looks like so they could take advantage of programs and services offerings that we have in the future. And I stress again that we're talking about water and electricity.
How long will it take us to get to install smart metering so we have real-time feeds on, not only from the collector, but individual meters?
What we'd like to do, and I think where we are right now in our process on selection, is that we're getting close to having this part of it ready to go for the last quarter of this fiscal year, kind of a budget standpoint, with our hope to start the actual implementation starting first part of calendar year next. Now, the good part of this arrangement is that we can put the network in or the radio system in, and then we're not driven by location. We can pick from a business case whether it's a residence or if they want to participate, say, in a time of day metering program or a business or other rate offerings, we can locate them all across town from a business perspective. So then we'll strategically start going down through that, picking places. The plan, it was presented, I think, some time ago. Someone looked at it. We're looking at about a 5 or 6 year implementation. But here again, I think we're in a good position that we can move that faster or slower to actually optimize our resources and then be prepared as those new rates come down, new programs come down, and as our customers ask for more information. So To your point, Alderman, I hope what we're trying to do is we'll actually be putting meters in the latter part of this year, fiscal year, definitely next year. And although it's a 5-year plan, in reality, once we start the process, it could roll fairly quickly.
How quickly? How quickly?
Well, it depends on if we want to go with contractor.
Yes.
If you want to go to a contractor, you're talking about months. If we're talking about our personnel, then you're talking about, at most, I think in total, we're talking with electric, and water, we're talking about 22,000 meters. And so, we'll take the time to do that. Water is about half of that. So
I guess that was leading into my next question. Will the water department be done before electric, or?
they could be,
Should be.
and we've talked about that. And necessarily, they don't have to match up exactly with the location, depending on the vendor. But I think the intent in talking with Doug, getting the readings back, which will make a big impact on this. This will allow all of the readings to be done remotely. We need to stay fairly close together. But anyway, that's kind of where we are, and like I said, I hope we'll be bringing back exactly the final product, but I think it'll be fairly soon. And I do think from the city, we're well positioned to be on the front end, and then we can, with the fiber ring and with this network in place this year, to be able to move as fast as we need to. At the same time, not overspend and make sure we miss something down the road as well. We're trying to do that.
As far as personnel, is there any kind of changes you're foreseeing, or is it going to be the same number of individuals? Or?
I think we're looking right now at probably the same ones. There's a different skill set, and we're actually preparing that right now. People that actually pull meters, you're probably going to be looking at the meter data in a different setting.
Yes.
Type of service. Instead of going out and putting a meter in, it'll actually be on a computer doing a switch.
Yes.
That type of thing. So I don't think there'll be a drastic change in the numbers. Skill sets will be a little bit different. And I will say that once we get into the fiber, and Joel may allude to this too, there is going to be a need for this, what we consider IT level 3, this additional support, just in being able to manage this big fiber network. But Joel might want to talk about that. And that's more of just as an as-need basis. You wouldn't be on staff all the time. But every time you have a major flaw in one of these locations, you'd have to have someone with specialized equipment to come in and make this. And we are trying to minimize the number of, I guess what you'd say, junction boxes, to kind of give you an idea. Those are the major interfaces. We'll start in fiber right here, maybe on this location. We'll actually put our AMI on the backbone itself. That's where we'd like to get to long term. And in the meantime, these will actually be on cell service, feeding back to that for the short term. Would y'all like to see this, or I don't know if you're interested in this. They're here. I'll be glad to show them to you. This is the fiber, the backbone. This is the little stuff that we're going to hook to it throughout the town, okay? And like I said, you should be seeing some work late spring throughout the summer to install this and help us a good start. Joel, I'll turn it over to you, because I think the other advantage to this is it provides opportunities to fit in with other.
Don't you have an image?
Oh, yeah, let me show you a collector. There's a collector. If you see it mounted on the pole, there will be 12 of those, and I say 12, you could add another one. You'll also notice that they can be easily located on our facilities, our poles. The overhead ground wire, this is installed on the very top of all the poles, if you look in our transmission, whereas this is in our distribution circuit, so we'll actually install this. But this is what I'm talking about, your collector right here. And we'll have 12 of those, should cover the entire city. Thanks, Joel.
And that's actually on my street. It's reading a meter on my house.
Just to give you an idea, this is when we're using to test some things on certain criteria that we have to have before we actually move forward. Okay, excuse me.
Thanks, Terry.
Oh, Will this help us also in meeting smart metering requirements that I know the federal government is trying to institute nationally?
Yeah, as far as the national grid, it will fit directly in with the national grid. And I think if you looked at it since that point, there's only about 10% there, but they anticipate in the next 10 years it'll need to be 100%. So we're up front, and we want to get it put in a good position. Thanks, Terry.
Well, this infrastructure that Terry and Starkville Electric are going to provide makes us pretty excited for some potential projects that we can kind of piggyback off of this. One of the projects in the immediate term that we see that this can give us some lift on is to utilize SED's fiber ring as a backhaul for wireless access points throughout the city. So another part of the plan, what we need to do while we're planning this, is to bolster our infrastructure here at City Hall to accommodate additional traffic and hardware. And just like Terry and his team are planning, we're planning a phased approach. We see an initial implementation of up to 10 access points throughout the town, and we'll implement additional access points each year as needed or budgeted. These will be Wi-Fi access points. Purpose of the project. Why do we think this is important? Provide wireless access points at several locations throughout the city. Places like parks, recreation areas, the downtown corridor. Here is a map of the downtown area with just a proposed sort of depiction of what these access points might look like. And again, this is phase one, just downtown. We would have several routers deployed down the Main Street University Drive corridor to provide this access to the public. And we also see a public safety use as well. As we deploy these throughout the city, officers in the field could potentially upload reports remotely back to home base.
Are these also mounted on the poles?
Yes,
That's
yeah. In
everything?
fact, we have a picture of these routers
Yeah.
as well. They're very unobtrusive and really cool little devices. This is another depiction. This is the Sportsplex McKee Park area. We envision around 3 routers, maybe more, maybe less, in this area as we get specific about the planning. But again, this will provide access points to the public. You can imagine folks at recreation events, perhaps students studying at the park benches at McKee Park could have access to the internet. And again, we could have public safety usage as police officers, again, could remotely connect to City Hall and upload reports.
So if I lived in that circle, then I would have.
I can cancel my Wi-Fi coverage.
I wouldn't have to have any
And
internet.
you do have to realize that this works best outdoors. So. But that's right. So you couldn't count on it for indoor. We're not going to encourage on any service providers. So but as we zoom out, this is sort of a map of the overall project. The fiber ring, as Terry discussed, the additional fiber pulls to the Recplex, enabling us to deploy these potential access points. And ideally, what we would do over time is deploy more and more of these and create sort of a mesh throughout town to give us enhanced coverage. And Alderman, here are the pictures of the routers mounted on various poles. Yeah.
If someone's wanting to gain access onto our system, I'm thinking, are they going to have like a password and things like that, or is it going to be open access?
We can certainly do that. MSU's model is sort of, they give you a guest password,
Yeah.
That changes daily, I think, and then you'd have to access that password in order to gain access.
So I'm saying if it's a ball game weekend and we've got people downtown and they're trying to access it, they would be able to do without having to contact City Hall. They'd be able to get on without contacting
Well,
City Hall.
that's a decision we could make. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be wide open, or we could say you need to stop by City Hall, or for a wireless password. So.
And to the effect of what Joel is saying, one of the implementations that some cities have done is to have it to where once you connect, it takes you automatically to a page that then
Right.
tells you how to securely connect, if that's a concern.
Exactly. So there are several ways we can secure the system, certainly.
So City Hall will be open on Saturday, so.
Exactly, yeah.
How would you propose in that idea, though, to provide the actual bandwidth for it? Would you want to connect the fiber ring to one of the backbones running through the area?
Yeah, ideally
Lease
it's
it out?
gonna backhaul to City Hall or SCD. So potentially in the future, that bandwidth would be an issue. We may have to.
Think of how popular it becomes.
Exactly. So we would see what kind of uptick in traffic we would get. Right now, we have 10 up, 10 down here at City Hall. So we would see how much of that would be consumed by users. But again, here's some depictions of what these outdoor routers look like. They're very unobtrusive and they mount easily to utility poles. Our timeline that we envision for this particular part of the project, our infrastructure improvements, which are things that we need to do at City Hall regardless. They're things that are on our timeline independent of this, but this would be concurrent with the pulling of the fiber by SED. The deployment of the first phase access points would be beginning upon completion of the fiber pull, that first phase fiber pull, and deployment of additional access points each year as budget allowed and needs arise. And this is just again, cost. This is a target, phase one, switches, routers, other equipment, infrastructure improvements, not to exceed $35,000 for phase one. And again, some of that overlaps with proposed infrastructure improvements that need to occur independent of this project.
Just 35 would be covering the 4 Main Street corridors, or the 4 points within the sportsplex.
Right.
And McKee Park.
Well, as much as we could. We would have to bid out and see what we could do with our infrastructure improvements here, and then see how much we would have left over to start deploying access points.
Yes.
That's the idea.
I wanted to just go back to, I think what I was talking about, or maybe Alderman Dumas, about how fast on the electric and water side we would do that. There's a volume on that. What we're trying to do is being able to pace it based on the business case. Because if we implemented it all, though we could hire contractors, we're talking about a fairly sizable expense on the thing. I think from the electric side, we're talking about like $3.5 million. And on the water, you're talking about $2 million. So what we want to do is stage that in such a way that we can get the best bang from the business case and minimal impact on our rates.
Well, I think, anytime everybody in here flies or anything, it's standard practice. I didn't know if you were maybe thinking some kind of $1.50, $2. I fly, it's $8 or $10 every time you get on in an airport, but that'd be maybe one way to cover that from a business side. Are y'all talking about totally free access to the public?
That's a decision, of course, you guys would need to have significant input on, but that's certainly a model that we could explore.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess also to say, having looked at way different cities have provided wireless access before, I've looked at probably 5 or 6 different cities and they did it 5 or 6 different ways.
Oh, right.
Some of it was advertisement-based funding, some of it was through, if you wanted to sign up for it. So again, it all depends too.
Certainly, and in some cities it's an enterprise fund where they're actually the service provider. So it's, like you said, there are many different models.
Further questions or comments from the members? Any further questions or comments from the members? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Thanks, guys.
Can we take a break?
Yeah, without objection, we'll move into a brief recess. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, stand in recess. Meeting will now come back to order. The next matter on the agenda is discussion and consideration of adding Northside Drive ditch to the drainage improvements to be made for the capital improvement projects for 2012. Discussion. Alderman Ball?
Yes, sir, that was something I brought, put it on the agenda, Mr. Mayor. Like one of my constituents said, this has been going on for about 28 years. We've been through 5 mayors, 2 of them, one of them did 2 terms. And we said about the easement, all the easements are in except the one from the Korean church. They the one homes, they hold some property, but all other easements, they are in. And this situation had caused a lot of problems, unhealthy, unsafe. Got erosion just constantly going on because since the last time we've been back there, it's some more erosion have gone on behind there. And we got to look at the end of fund balance or something because this is not more than $49,000. And this has been going on for quite a few years, 28 years, I guess longer than the Carver Drive ditch been going on. I mean, somewhere down the road, we need to stop somewhere and take a look and try to fix some of these ditches. And because it wouldn't be so difficult if we hadn't gone out and looked at this our own self. We all saw the situation. We all saw how the erosion is going on. But you're not there in the summertime when the smell come out. You're not there when all that going on and snakes come out. You don't see that. But we see the condition of this. And I would like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we go ahead on and put this on and add this to the 2012 capital improvement plan and start to work on it in 2012 and try to complete it by 2012. Because we really need to do something for they keep coming and keep coming, you know, and we still not doing anything, but we can do many things in Starkville. But we're not catering to the citizen of need. And we said what is our mission? To make sure that we provide a quality of life for all citizens of Starkville. And this is not a quality of life for them. They've been battling with this 28 years, and I know it's something we had inherited. But we can make all kind of ordinance. We can find money to do many things. But somewhere down the line, we got to make a start. We got to start here somewhere. Go to Carver Drive. Go to Maple Street. There's a lot of them. But we got to allocate some money somewhere to get started on this.
So is your motion to start a list of capital projects, drainage projects for 2012 with Northside Drive on the list?
That's my motion, to add it to the capital improvement plan.
All right.
Formed and completed, 2012.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion to add Northside Drive to the list of drainage improvements to be made in 2012. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
Read that back, Mr. Mayor. Don't sound like what you said.
Add the Northside Drive drainage project to the list of drainage projects to be completed in 2012.
Yeah, performed and completed, right.
Right. So it would be add Northside Drive ditch to the drainage improvements to be performed and completed in 2012. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
Yes, sir. That's it.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
Only thing I can just say, Mr. Mayor, is somewhere we got to do something. We got to do something. They taxpayers too, and we just can't keep looking over them. You know, we're just saying like we just. And then if I'm like Mr. Hill, somewhere down the line, we did say we're gonna be on 2012. Somehow it got off of 2012, and it didn't got pushed so far back. And I'm just wondering, how did it get pushed back so far? Because those constituents, somebody said something that will be on 2012. And I'm mistaken. It was said something similar to that. But we got to stop somewhere and make a start.
Further discussion.
I've got a question. I know we took the bus tour, but I'm going to ask the city engineer. Complained about black flies and mosquitoes. Is this matting going to cause that to flow so fast there won't be any standing water, or is that going to totally take care of the stagnant water? Or
It's hopeful the matting will eliminate the erosion on the banks.
Right.
And then to reshape the bottom as much as we can to allow it to fully drain after rain begins.
So
That's the hope. I mean, you can't guarantee there'll be no low areas whatsoever, but you definitely try to, when you're in there grading it, try to eliminate those as much as you can.
and the total cost was the 49,000 some odd, or?
I don't have that spreadsheet from you. I wouldn't say
It was 48,000, 40.
No, here it's 49,222. Is that the latest estimate?
I don't have that right in front of me, but it's in that general ballpark. Yeah. When I said this pool, so that should be the latest.
It's 49,222, the latest figure.
How does this, as far as prioritization goes, how does this affect all the other projects? I know we haven't really set a list. We've got the list, but it's still open-ended. As far as prioritization goes, how long would it take to, if we send our guys in there, how long would it take to get this done? Weeks or months or days?
Well, we most likely wouldn't be able to start this type of work until the summer.
Yes, sir.
When it's dry. But it would take, probably, working continuously, probably a month, pending, good weather, working weather.
And then that would solve all of Northside Drive's problems as far as erosion control?
It would certainly help it out. I can't sit here and attest that every problem will be solved over there. But, it certainly will help the situation over there.
It's been 2 years since we went, but the houses weren't flooding, but it was getting closer and closer. And would this affect backflow at all? by putting this mining?
We've made some improvements over there in the last couple of years. We've added some inlets. We've re-poured some concrete flumes coming off the street. And Mr. Ball can attest more than I can, but I think it's helped on some of the real big rain events. It allowed, at least provided an emergency overflow during those events, because there's so few inlets on that street, especially on the lower end, that the water just couldn't leave the street. So we provided some emergency outlets to get it back to the creek. So I think that those efforts, and those were all done in-house, so those efforts have helped the situation from a flooding standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
I got one question, Mr. Kemp. And will that make it easy to maintain if we go ahead and do it now? Will that make it easy to maintain and keep maintenance work done on it?
Yes, sir. It'll be much easier to maintain.
Alderman Parker.
Now, while you're up, now this was, it never got taken off the list, right? I mean, it's been on the list since, didn't we put it on the list after we did the tour?
Right. It was put on the list about a year, maybe a little more ago.
What you have currently is you've got a list right now, those 28 projects, and you actually see some of those projects are crossed off of the list because they've been done in previous years. But you have never set a schedule of priorities like you've done with your street overlays with this list. Each year in this term, the board has just taken the amount of funding available for drainage and funded a series of projects.
Can I add to that also, Mayor, that another thing that this board has done is, we haven't funded projects that didn't have all the easements. And I know this one lacks just one easement, which hopefully will be pretty easy to get. But all the projects that have been funded thus far have had all the easements procured.
So this costs about $50,000. What is your total budget for these kind of projects, for the drainage project for this year? Yes, ma'am.
Allow me. We have just a blanket amount in there for capital improvements for this year. We've not designated any particular amount for any particular project, and we've not finalized our capital improvement budget for this year because we were waiting for the audited financial statements and to know how much we could add based on the result of those audited financial statements to the capital improvement plan. And I have a question. So the answer is Mr. Kemp can't tell you exactly how much is available for drainage projects right now because the board hasn't decided how much is available for drainage projects. So what we're voting on, because this is Northside is already on the drainage improvements program, is essentially prioritizing this outside of the cycle of capital improvement plans that we were talking about this past weekend. Is that correct?
That's correct. If this motion were to pass, I would anticipate this would be the start of your drainage projects that you would have identified for 2012. Then as you start firming up your street and drainage budget for the rest of the year, you would identify your additional drainage projects that, based on the budget, you could perform, and this would be a part of that list already designated as a project that would be funded this year.
Well, and I think we're leading into that. So my question about the total amount that we have, is $50,000 a drop in the bucket, or is it going to take
It's going to be a
substantial?
significant amount of what's currently budgeted. Currently, there's $450,000 in the capital improvement budget. Some of that is earmarked for Pat Station Road, so less than $450,000. So we would be spending maybe a quarter of what's currently budgeted. Again, we're hoping to add to those funds, but we won't know that answer until we have our audited financial statements.
Here's the reality with drainage projects that I discussed in the presentation I made back in December. Right now, you've got 3 very large drainage projects that at some point, if those projects are going to be done, they're going to require more revenue than you have in this program right now, and they're going to require multi-year financing. Now, this project is a much smaller expenditure. This project is one that it's possible to take outside of the context of those larger projects because you're not talking about something that is a total revenue game changer from a drainage standpoint. But I believe in order to fully fund this drainage program, you're going to have additional revenue that doesn't exist right now. And that's why I proposed the storm sewer fee in December, because quite frankly, there is no way that you can make this program fully fund itself over a 10-year period. So you either acknowledge that you can't complete this drainage list in 10 years, or you take an approach like the storm sewer program that actually puts the revenue into it to fund it. But now this particular project is similar to other projects that you've been able to fund on year-to-year revenues each year.
Just for the smallness of it.
Yeah, this is on a list that projects range from just a few $1,000s to $825,000 in estimates. This is a fairly low-cost project.
And I was going to say, and this list is a list that's been compiled over time. My ward has a series of projects that also have drainage issues, have some of the same issues that the people on North Side face with snakes, mosquitoes, all the problems that you mentioned earlier, flooding, all through my ward. And they're not even on this list because I'm not really sure how this list developed originally, but it can't be. I guess what I'm saying is there's no end to the drainage problems in the city, and a comprehensive list of these problems. I'm sure they exist in Ward 3, Ward 4, all the wards. This is just the tip of the iceberg as far as drainage problems throughout the city.
Alderman Carver.
I guess where I'm going with this is I would like to, at some point in the near future, maybe the next meeting or two, is figure out how much we've got if we're waiting on the financial audit, and get a number, and then start prioritizing what we can do this year, what we can't do, and what would it take. I guess I'm asking, is opening it up to a question, is what does it take to get to the next step? If to me, it would seem to fund this, and this has been a 28-year problem, and solve this problem before we start tackling the larger problems, which we can't afford anyway, but start leading into the larger projects. But at some point, what kind of time frame are we working on before we can actually pick out how much we've got to work with for 2012?
I've spoken to our accountant. We were supposed to have a budget and audit committee meeting tomorrow, but I have to be out of town.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to our accountant, and they are close. Am I right, Ms. Outlaw, to finalizing this number? I think they'll make a presentation to the board as a whole later this spring. But
and I spoke with Randy, and they were supposed to be back in to City Hall this week, and had some conflict with scheduling. So he told me they'll be in later this week to try to finish up. So we're looking at
2 to 4 weeks.
We're
At the
looking
outside.
at probably the second meeting in February is
At the outside.
What he's shooting at.
And we wouldn't begin any of these projects, would we, as you said, until it's drier?
Right, until it's dry.
And if you were to approve this tonight, it would be something you factored in at that point in time. When you get that sum of money, let's say you had $500,000 that were available for capital improvements, including streets and drainage this year, you would just start with $49,000 less with that project already identified.
How much did your stormwater fee bring in for the city each year?
It would bring in $400,000 a year, and with that revenue, you could split that revenue you would have approximately $200,000 a year that you could use to service debt for 10 years on the 3 large projects that total between $1.5 and $1.7 million altogether. And then after that revenue is exhausted, you've got an additional $200,000 that's remaining for projects like this, where you would select a series of smaller projects and just pay for them. To use this as an example, you could fund approximately 4 projects of this size every year. And you've got about 19 projects like that are outstanding on this list. And looking at the total estimated cost of those projects, it would take you about 5 years to work through that list with your other $200,000 that you had.
So in 5 years, we could not only take this list out, but then also start attacking the rest of the iceberg?
Yeah, you would have, you would be on track to complete every project on this list, plus the 3 major projects. And then you would be in position to do one of 2 things. You could either sunset your fee, and now you would want the fee probably to go for at least your 10-year debt service period, because you're going to be paying for those 3 major projects over a 10-year period. But you could sunset it at the end of that 10-year period, or you could recognize that this is a list that's constantly evolving. Projects get added almost every single year, and acknowledge that you might revisit it and see if you needed to continue to charge that amount once the 3 big projects were paid for, but acknowledge that you're going to have ongoing needs with the storm sewer system.
And so with that debt service then, with that initial bond, we could do Carver and Maple.
Carver,
at
Maple,
once.
and Colonial.
And Colonial at once.
Yes, they would be completed this year.
That's construction would impact whether or not that's a strong statement.
Well, let me ask you this then, if you're saying, we'll say $500,000 a year for these kind of projects, if we don't do a bond, then you're looking at 10 years minimum and just piecing together a project?
Well, and the biggest problem you've got is you're not ever going to have the revenue to fund any of the 3 large projects. So each of those projects represents such a large expenditure.
2 years worth of funds.
Well, either you would have to take an approach like take 2 or 3 years and use all of the funds to maintain the storm sewer system on those projects, which means that none of the other projects get any attention.
Right.
Or you would have to take a large amount of money out of the street program, which would cause the street program to suffer. Or you would have to acknowledge that you can't fund those projects. Yeah.
What mechanisms are in place if you go that route to guarantee that those funds collected are in fact spent and earmarked annually, even despite administration changes for drainage projects?
Well, there's no earmarking. Yeah, that would create an enterprise fund, which from an accounting standpoint, once you've created an enterprise fund, the revenue that's in that account cannot be commingled with other functions.
So it would be
you can't collect money for a storm sewer fee and use that money for another purpose.
So that's restricted to the point of it's guaranteed across administrations that those fees are to be used to bring us up to speed on our drainage projects.
Right.
Mayor, may we recognize?
You may.
City Clerk, do you recall back in the year of 2000 thereabout when the city earmarked $1 million of tax for the annex roads? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, and am I correct that money is no longer earmarked for annex roads?
That's correct.
And that $1 million that was represented to be for annex road has now been transferred and commingled with the general fund?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Were those restricted funds?
No, it was, each year when the board sets its budget and sets the mill rate, it determines how they want those mills.
And this is.
And Ms. Outlaw,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
could you speak to the difference in how tax revenues can be repurposed as opposed to fee revenues?
Certainly. With your mill rate, the board sets the mill rate each year, and they levy the taxes as to how they want to apportion it, whether they want it all general fund, or if they want street, or however they want it, that's where they set the mill rate. And a revenue, just a enterprise fund, the monies collected for that enterprise fund has to be spent in that enterprise fund. We can't collect the water funds and pay street department. It has to be for water.
So would it be correct to say that by law, any money collected for a stormwater sewer fee could not be used for any purpose other than to maintain the storm sewer system?
That enterprise fund, that's correct.
Alderman Perkins.
Two things, Mr. Mayor. Number one, the city clerk is not, she's not qualified to give legal opinions. And number two, I want to ask the city attorney, at a prior meeting, the gentleman from Ward 4 asked you to, of course, you didn't get no instruction to research that, but the gentleman from 4, if you're not prepared to answer it tonight, Mr. Attorney, I highly respect it, but I want to ask you the question that the gentleman from 4 posed to you some meetings ago. And his question was, is it legal to have these impact fees? Now, if you don't know the answer to it, don't guess it. I'm talking to the city attorney. He's our lawyer. We only got one city attorney at this table. I have the floor. So my question to the city attorney is what the mayor proposing? Is that, as the gentleman from 4 asked, you have the same question. If you're not prepared to answer it, don't answer it. Don't shoot from the hip on it. And is it legal to have the impact fee or whatever type, however you want to characterize that? Is that fee legal to do what he's proposed to do? Now, if you don't know the answer, you tell us you don't know the answer and give us an answer later. We want to know the answer to the question.
Sure, I'll tell you what I've done. I have researched it.
Fully? Is it fully?
No, I have not found an answer that I'm satisfied with, that it's expressly legal or expressly illegal or unsaid.
Okay, well, I want to hear your opinion until you can tell me, as our lawyer, what the law is.
Yes, sir.
Now, I want you to shoot halfway. I want to know what the law is, so you don't know the answer to that question. So I think before we have any more discussion about these fees, with great respect to the proponent of this, I think we need to get an opinion from the attorney that the board hired.
Certainly. I agree. Further discussion. Alderman Corey.
And following up in that too, if there's still any question, I would request that you seek Attorney General's opinion on this, if necessary. But that said, this whole discussion has kind of gotten beyond the scope of what the original topic was, which was Alderman Vaughn's request. And so, that said, I would call the question.
All right, the question's been called by Alderman Corey on Alderman Vaughn's motion. Is there any objection to voting on Alderman Vaughn's motion at this time? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Vaughn's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 Show of hands, Mayor.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, or excuse me, by a vote of 3 in favor with 4 against, this measure fails. The next matter on the agenda is a discussion and consideration of choosing the members of the selection committee to evaluate RFPP proposals for the public-private partnership for municipal facility projects. Discussion.
Mayor, and I'm welcome to input from the board on volunteers, but if I make a motion to this, do I need to, I guess, open up the floor as to who I would, and if they aren't agreeable, then that's fine. I would move that we create a selection committee to evaluate the RFPP proposals for the creation of a public-private partnership for development of municipal facilities with Alderman Sistrunk, Alderman Corey,
I'm fine with that.
Alderman, who's in 5? Dumas?
Yeah. I have no problem with that. Alderman Parker has made a motion to appoint members of the selection committee to evaluate RFPP proposals for the public-private partnership from the board to be Alderman Sistrunk, Alderman Corey, and Alderman Dumas. Alderman Parker, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Sistrunk?
I just want to say that it is a committee to evaluate the proposals. Until we get to the point that we would enter into a contract, we've not committed the city or any city funds to a project. So at this point, it is just information gathering and preparing to go a little further down that path toward exploring options for municipal facilities.
Further discussion. Alderman Vaughn.
I'm gonna say the same thing I said at the retreat. A building is more important than the citizens of Starkville. A building is more important than the citizens of Starkville. What we said, our mission, that all citizens of Starkville have a quality of life.
Further discussion. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I want to be recognized.
Alderman
I
Burton.
just want to add that at some point, I hope that the board will reprioritize some of its matters and things that is presently before us. And I know the matter has been defeated, but hopefully in the future, the board will at least see some viability in terms of reconsidering the request to Northside Drive in light of the fact that, as the gentleman from 7 just said, here you have, you want to proceed back down to the path of spending whatever amount of dollars is necessary and proper to achieve this matter that's on the table at this time, but yet, there's not a majority view to help improve the quality of life of these people who have been in need of this matter for 28 years. I mean, this is really, respectfully, seems to be kind of misdirected as to how we're proceeding. So, in closing here, I just want to say these matters are now getting down to the point, it's just a matter of what project is best suited for certain matters and things. So hopefully, we can move in a better direction in getting these things funded as particularly with the a minimum funding of $49,000 for a capital improvement project. And here you want to set the groundwork for this selection committee. Eventually going to lead to a contract. And basically, and I don't think there's going to be any real concern about any dollar amount that may be necessary and proper to move this particular project on, dealing with this partnership. So I just hope that we can get the support to help fund these capital improvement projects, and not only just the north side, but for others projects maybe before us.
Further discussion. Any further discussion? Alderman Carter.
If we're going to discuss the last matter, I'd like to say that I would like to have on the next board meeting, and again, a discussion on North Side Drive, but leading into that, have the city attorney bring back some findings before we lead into that, and then again, we need to discuss the stormwater fee, or the drainage fee, is that what you call it?
Be a storm sewer fee.
Storm sewer fee, and the impacts that has, but I'd definitely like to readdress North Side Drive at the next meeting.
Okay. Further discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Parker's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is a report by Doug Devlin on the remediation of brown water issues.
Mayor, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to leave early. I'm have a family situation that I have to deal with. Could we move the paperless packet ahead of Mr. Devlin so that
Are you making a motion to
Yes,
amend the
please.
agenda?
Yes, please.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to amend the agenda to move item 10I ahead of what was previously item 10H. So those matters would just swap. I would become H and H would become I. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
I think so.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits? Alderman Sistrunk has the floor.
I don't think it will take us very long, and we can move to a vote very quickly, so if that's acceptable with the remainder of the board.
Alderman Perkins.
Just very brief, and thanks for the recognition. Very short here, Mr. Mayor. Whoever puts this motion out, and I talked to Ms. Sproul about it, I'm just very old school, and, just make that for 7, and Ms. Sproul will have my packet ready at the, her staff will have my packet ready, from here on. So it'll save the city some money, too. So it says 8, I believe. Whatever the number is, just subtract 1 from it.
Okay.
I don't need it, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor.
All right, but right now we're discussing whether to reorder the agenda. All right, so further discussion on reordering the agenda. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure carries. Consideration of purchase of 8 iPads. Discussion. Alderman Sistrunk.
I move that we purchase up to 8 iPads for the Board of Aldermen to allow for paperless Board of Aldermen meetings in an amount not to exceed $6,000, which is in an amount not to exceed $6,000.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to authorize the purchase of up to 8 iPads for the Board of Aldermen to allow for paperless Board of Aldermen meetings in an amount not to exceed $6,000. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
This is tonight's board packet. It's not just the paper that we're concerned about. There's people time invested in this. There's copier charges invested in this. I suspect a penny a page or more.
A penny a page.
A penny a page plus the people time involved in this. I'm not an early adapter to technology. I am an adapter. I'm not an early adapter. So I suspect y'all might eventually get to that point, those of you who've said you're not interested in it. But I think it would save us money. I think it would be cost effective, and it's about what we have left in our contingency fund this year. So.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, I guess my biggest concern would be when we get into the plats and the big maps and the things, and I've never had an iPad, so how are you able to zoom in, and are they easy to navigate?
Do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, it'll spread it out or shrink it in.
Yeah.
And it's certainly possible to continue to do, some packets if there are people that prefer to do that.
As far as security and things like that, when we get our information, will we be sent an email, any kind of sensitive information that we go to executive session about, or what about those kind of security issues with an iPad?
Now, I can't answer the security issues, but if you want the executive session material by paper, that can certainly be arranged. But I do believe that it'd be just as safe as doing your banking online.
Okay.
Good example.
And I would concur with the plats and things like that. I mean, I'd rather see a plat or a zoning, just not necessarily the packet part of it, but the big fold out things we get. Is that something we would need to request at the? I mean, how do we set up those?
I think when we got our e-packets, we could ask for anything in paper that we wanted.
Well, if I may, from that standpoint, we asked for a set number of copies of plats and plots per project. And so we would need to be specific to that at the beginning of the process. Am I wrong here, Ben? So one of the actual positives could actually be that we also reduce the number of copies we require developers and builders to give us, because they would have to submit those documents electronically to be transmitted to the board.
But I don't think there was anything oversized in tonight's packet.
No.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Pruitt, now, I just want to make sure, while we're in an official setting, you do understand that I don't want no iPad, whatever you want to call it. You know, I want this packet from.
I'm very clear about that.
Okay, very good. That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Sistrunks' motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. Alderman Vaughn, were you for or against?
I abstain from it.
All right, all those abstaining, please signify by raising your hand. All right, by a vote of 5 in favor with 1 against and 1 abstention, this measure passes.
Thank y'all for accommodating my schedule, and thank you for allowing me to interrupt.
Mr. Devlin, you're up.
Okay. Y'all remember last year, calendar year 2011, we had a large rash of brown water problems with our city potable water system. So tonight I'm just going to give you a kind of an overview of 2011, you know, where we were and what we're doing, and then talk about what we're going to be doing going forward. So first of all, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our water and discuss the 2 distinct parts of what we do. One is production, the other one is distribution. But the city of Starkville, like many municipalities and water companies in this area, is really fortunate in the fact that we have a very good quality aquifer to draw water from. We've been to other parts of the country and drank water or seen some of the difficulties they experience in just having enough supply of water. It puts into perspective how fortunate we are here in Starkville. First of all, I'm going to start with production. The city of Starkville for decades has had an excellent water source and treatment process. The aquifers which we draw water from are 1,500 feet deep and into the Gordo aquifer, so there's minimal risk of contamination of any kind from agricultural and industrial activities. After we draw it out of the ground, it's run through a pressure filtration system that consists of sand, media, and then any of the metals or you know, iron and manganese that comes in with the groundwater is captured there and then backwashed out of the system. So we do a real good job of keeping iron and manganese out of our distribution system. So the problems we've been experiencing with the groundwater is related to the distribution system, and I just wanted to show that it's not related to the source of the water that we use. Okay, now we're going to talk about the distribution system. That's just the series of pipes that deliver the water to your home in the city. Brief history of pipe design and construction in the 20th century. The initial pipes that were used for potable water were cast iron pipes without any coating of any kind on them to prevent rust. Over the years, they developed different types of coatings that go in these pipes. The iron pipes we get now have a cement mortar lining on the inside, which prevents rust from forming. But still, in the city of Starkville, we still have, particularly in the older sections in the northern part of town, downtown, we still have several miles of the old uncoated cast iron pipes, which can be problematic as far as iron. In the absence of these coatings, water over time it will form a compound called ferric oxide, and it forms as a deposit on the pipe wall. And ferric oxide is just a fancy name for rust, is what that means in layman's terms. The city's had a good program over the years of water treatment and additives, and you know, for about 20 years now we've been adding a phosphate corrosion inhibitor or sequestrant that some of the the scale that does break up from these pipe walls, the sequestrant will actually move it into a solution or an emulsion where it's not visible. It's still there. It's just dissolved into a solution, and where it's not visible and causes problems for the customers. On this map, what we did is we took all our work orders up through the date we did this presentation, which was through the end of October. And we plotted the location of all the calls for groundwater complaints. And as you can see, the problem is in the northern section. You know, this is Highway 12, the new Highway 12, and then this is Starkville here. So the problem is kind of isolated to this northern section. As we said a minute ago, that's the part of town where we have the most of the real old cast iron pipes. So that, you know, intuitively that makes sense that we would have these problems up in that area of town. We went ahead and did a histogram of the complaint frequency throughout last year up through November, and you can see, I mean, prior to maybe mid-2010, the only time we ever really got a groundwater call was two different situations. One is if we had a major main break where there's a high flow of water, you know, which dislodged these deposits. And the other time would be when we were out with the fire department flow testing hydrants. So, you know, that higher velocity would press the water loose. But we just never did, up to that point, have any really brown water calls, just simply, you know, in the absence of those two activities. I mean, in 2011, for some reason, we were having this problem without, you know, main breaks occurring or flow testing of hydrants occurring. And you know, one thing we did, you will notice, is August, you know, we had a real big uptick there. And, you know, we're saying, well, what happens in August in Starkville that might cause that? And then, you know, the thing that came to my mind is that's when students are coming back from summer break and getting back into town. And when that happens, it does cause the direction of flow in our distribution system as students move into apartments and start using more water. The flow may move in an opposite direction, and that inherently will cause these oxides to break loose and get into the pipe. Now, one thing we did notice, and we found out that this was a critical factor later, but we did notice this early in the year. This is our water loss percentage for the city, and what we do is we compare the amount of water that we bill that's going through the meters. You know, we total all that up to the how much water that we pump from the wells, and then the difference between the two is your water loss percentage. Like, you know, if we did 100 million gallons pumped out of the wells and only billed 80 million, that means there's 20 million in there that's unaccounted for. Prior to last year, you know, pretty consistently was between 15 and 20% in that number. And then here about March, we saw a huge increase and didn't understand why. I mean, we went do the normal things. We start walking the ditches and start looking for major leaks. Couldn't find it. And so, but still this problem was there. We didn't know what was going on. And then finally, completely by accident. I don't know if y'all remember down here on 182, we had that issue with that building collapsed into the storm system down across from where the University Hotel is, I believe where it is. But during that process of helping Edward and his department, you know, with smoke testing and all these other things, try to figure out where that storm system went, we popped the lid on one storm sewer and just saw a torrent of water. So we discovered a major leak that was underneath Jackson Street that wasn't coming to the surface. It was just draining into the storm sewer. So it went undetected for several months. Then when we fixed it, I believe we fixed it right about in this area here. And I'll show it too, but right after we made that repair, we saw a big decline in the amount of brown water calls. So, you know, this could be a factor too. But then again, we did have events like that before. We've had large, you know, big leaks that were not discovered until a later period of time. that didn't cause groundwater calls like this. So, you know, there's some other issues involved, and we'll try to give you some conclusions here in a minute.
Doug, is 15-20%, is that typical municipal
Yeah,
water
for-
service
for our area.
loss percentage?
Yeah, it is. We want to get better. You know, we want to keep driving that number down.
The automated meters will help significantly with that, won't they?
Yeah, that'll help get the unaccounted for water, definitely. And then, but still, you know, we do have some leaks, you know, some big ones, you know, that happen. They're just in areas where we just can't visibly see them. Situation like, and we had one in Vine Street, I remember, last year. Didn't even know it was there until we were down behind on Yellow Jacket Drive. We were looking in that ditch one day, and it was the middle of the summer, and hadn't had rain in a month, and torrent of water, and then we traced it back, and it was underneath Vine Street. So, you know, we still have those things, but you know, it's like I said earlier. You know, we're so blessed that sometimes we lose track. If you go out west to some of the western states, you know, they wouldn't, you know, they have to maintain 95%, you know, accountability on their water just simply because it's so scarce. But this, so that's part of the something I'm going to talk about here in a minute as well. And this is so once we did that, we repaired that leak, I believe, sometime in October. But anyway, what we did is we looked at our work order calls on brown water, and we went back 39 days prior to the repair, and then we went out 39 days after the repair, which was all the data I had at the time I put this presentation together. And you can see for the 39 days prior to the repair, we had almost 100 complaints, and then the 39 days after, we had you know, about 25 complaints. So, you know, pretty compelling evidence that, you know, repairing that leak might have had an effect on the groundwater.
So with the leak, the water was flowing at a much higher volume.
Right.
And so your system was cleansing at a much higher volume. So the water was
Yeah.
flowing, and it was removing the ferric oxide.
Absolutely.
At a
And
much
that leak may have caused water that would normally flow one direction without it to come the opposite direction too.
Okay.
So opposite, you know, opposite flow directions will dislodge some of these, some of this ferric oxide as well. So, you know, the conclusions is, you know, we seem to be coming out of it. So now we go back and we try to assess, well, what happened? You know, why did we have all these problems? And so we're trying to basically come up with a theory which we can apply to the future to make sure we can avoid a similar type situation. But so we kind of, basically there's too many independent variables in play to really come to an exact, you know, statistically valid, well, this is the cause. So I think it was the best combination of things, if we were to speculate. One thing that did happen, and we think this has something to do with it too, is when we had to comply with the groundwater, the new groundwater rule, which required higher levels of disinfection in the system. You know, the disinfection, fluorine is an oxidizer, which will basically dislodge a lot of these rust deposits from the wall. So we think that's a factor. And the reason we say that is because a lot of the things that happened, you know, big leaks, yeah, we've had big main breaks, huge main breaks. You know, we've had, you know, students coming back in and out of town, but we've never had this problem before. So we think this was probably the catalyst. You know, it oxidized the rust layer, it made it unstable, where events that didn't cause problems in the past now did cause problems. And then, and basically same thing, you know, flow conditions, just basically what I just said is, you know, these conditions that weren't problems before now are problems. I'm going to just briefly come out of this presentation for just a second and show you an article from the AWWA Journal about the program we're doing now. just go back to the beginning of this. Okay. And the thing I want to point out is just a couple of main points in this article. You know, reacting to just groundwater problems, the way we've been doing it, we would just go out and somebody would complain about water, and we'd go flush that area until it was clean, and then come back and then just repeat the process over and over. But you know, it's been proven that if you react that way, if you just respond to customer complaints about water quality in this manner, the process improves only temporarily. You know, eventually it's just going to resurface again. The common practice for municipalities that have a lot of these old cast iron pipes, particularly in the urban areas of the Northeast, is they have actual scheduled flushing programs that they do on a rotating basis, and that keeps the oxides flushed out. And this process is called unidirectional flushing, and that's last quarter of last year is when you authorized us to hire a couple of extra people to get this program going. But this process provides a longer term solution because you're developing higher velocities because you're just flushing in one direction, and then you're going from the potable source or the production operations to the outer parts of the system. And it's been empirically proven that this process actually works. And this is some data from a study that was done with unidirectional flushing, and that this little graph in here is turbidity measurement. And turbidity is just basically a measure of in layman's term, how muddy a solution is, or you know, how many visible suspended solids in the solution are there. And then this is the actual level of the iron, the measured iron in the system. So, you know, you can see before they started the program, you know, they were getting elevated levels of turbidity, and then after they did the flushing, then they sampled the water again, you know, pretty significant rate, you know, like 75 to 80% reductions in turbidity, and also in the iron content in the water. So it's a proven method that's worked, and it's going to work for us too. Get back into this again. Just talk about some of the advantages. It goes beyond water quality, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you know, it scours the ferric oxide from the pipe walls, and then another thing it does is a lot of times when we have a main break and have to work on the system, we have to close several valves because water is coming from so many different directions to get that water shut off to make the repair. And then, you know, as we go back and turn them back on, you know, occasionally we leave one closed. I mean, you got water coming from two different directions, which is getting the customer's water, but you're not getting that flow through. So you got dead ends. You create what's called dead ends. And these dead ends increase water age, you know, in the larger pipes. You know, it's going to sit there longer before, you know, normal use turns that water over. And, you know, over the long term, that can be detrimental to the water quality. So when we're going to go around and do this program, one thing we're doing is we're going to touch every single valve, exercise them, and make sure they're open. You know, we'll find them closed, and then exercising the valves also make sure that when you get ready to open them or close them, they'll work. If they sit there too long, you know, they become seized up, and you can't operate them. So, you know, this is something we need to be doing anyway. And then also, when you have a scheduled program like this, we can also do the Fire Bureau hydrant flow testing with the fire department at the same time as we're doing this program. And then by doing that, we'll eliminate duplicate customer complaints for discolored water, because when we do the flow testing, it is going to temporarily cause some brown water in the area until it gets cleared out. So that's another advantage of the program. So we hired that crew. They're out there now. They're doing their thing. So you know, we're gonna start in the northeast quadrant of the city and then just kind of move west. And then the first phase before we do the actual flushing is pretty important. And we need to make sure we know where all the valves are. Over the years, for whatever reason, streets get paved and you know, the valves get covered up and you know, if they're in a grassy area, you know, they get covered over with dirt and all that kind of thing. So you really can't do unidirectional flushing until you can operate all the valves that show on your map. And there's a good many of them out there that we can't find, unfortunately. So what they're doing now is they're actually going out there and finding these valves, and they're getting the GPS coordinates and giving them to Andrew. And then, so over the time, we'll have a good GPS-based map that'll have the actual locations of all the valves in it. Then there's the problem of valves we can't find. So once we go through and you know, get GPS all the valves that we can find, then the time-consuming part of having to go back and find these lost ones. And you know, you got to bring equipment, you got to do digging, you got to have metal detectors. You know, it's just a time-consuming process. So, you know, once we get through with that part of it, then we can get started with the actual flushing program. And then once we get ready to start the flushing program, we'll publish information in the media to let know we're going to be flushing in your area of town, and you know, you will temporarily have brown water because you know, we want to let everybody know in advance what's going on. So
You talking about a day or two? Tops,
yeah,
or a week?
yeah.
Just during the unidirectional.
Well, what we'll probably do is we'll publish we'll have a weekly schedule and get that out. You know,
by quadrant.
Yeah, maybe that weekend, and just keep it going in the paper through the whole week. You know, just so we know this area of town, we're going to be doing this, and you know, let everybody know. So at this point, I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Let me ask you a question about downtown. All the clay pipes, are they going to be harder to get to? Are they under the buildings or anything like that? Are they out in the roadways?
The water pipes, some of them are under buildings.
How do you address that, Abram?
Well, you hope they don't leak under the building for one thing, but the main thing is with this program, as long as there's, you know, it's not leaking, and then we got valves on either side, and we know where all the valves are, we can flush that line.
Well, you know, I'm saying that because Hotel Chester, and I didn't know if you could ever bore them out and or reset new pipe in their place. And if something is under a building, can you not bore them out, or can you never take the old pipes out unless?
Well, if something's under a building and we have to replace it, we would reinstall it around and abandon the part that was under the building. You know, we've done that before.
Okay.
Yeah. And matter of fact, one pretty recently that the school I was talking about this morning, we did that. So,
Okay.
and you know, there's a condominium complex in South Montgomery that has a sewer line running right under it. You know, so.
A lot of places in the Cotton District like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah, a lot in the Cotton District. But, you know, that was back in the days before we did site plan review and all that, and, you know, building permits were issued, and, you know, without really having a sense of what all the infrastructure was.
If you do downtown area, you gonna try to do those on a Friday, Saturday, or something where there's less traffic, commercial traffic? or
Yeah,
how-
we're always sensitive to that. You know, if there's football games in town, you know, we're not gonna do anything, you know, whenever we have a lot of out-of-town guests in. You know, we're always sensitive to that on any kind of planned thing like this. You know, we work around the activities in town, make sure we don't disrupt anything there.
At what point do you replace pipe? If
we
like all this cast iron pipe, I mean, at what point does it become more cost effective to replace it?
There's two triggers on that. One is we follow the paving program in downtown. If we're getting ready to overlay a street, you know, you want to have a good 10-year life out of that overlay.
Mm-hmm.
And if we got cast iron pipe there, we'll go ahead and replace it before we overlay it. 'Cause, you know, you just hate to put a brand new surface on, then we're out digging it up and patching leaks and everything else, you know. So, you know, that's one trigger. And then the other is we sort our work orders over the years, and we look at, you know, where we're having all these leaks on which lines, and then, you know, those are those are things we'll do outside the paving program.
Right.
Yeah, we'll just go in there and replace those pipes. Because at some point, it's more cost-effective to just replace them than to keep going and, repairing them all the time.
Do we have more, you don't have to know the answer to this, but what percentage of pipe do we have that is cast iron versus
Yeah.
PVC?
If I were to guess, Alderman Dumas, I would say,
And are those the only two types we have, water lines?
well, we got PVC, which is the new pipe, which
Right.
doesn't have no problem. And then, we got some of the newer ductile iron that has the cement mortar lining in it, which is not a problem. As far as brown water goes, there's other problems associated with it. And then, the ones here, I would just say the Cotton District and downtown and up in your area.
So your older areas have the
older
clay-
areas.
the
Yeah,
cast
I would
iron.
say all of that. And if you look at that as a, percentage of the total miles of pipe, I'm gonna say maybe 35%, something like that,
So when did we start using PVC only?
It was when Bill Webb was here, probably, I would say about 20 years ago.
So we've been doing
A
that
lot
for a
of the
while.
new development in town, all these newer subdivisions, particularly, there's been a lot of growth in South Montgomery area.
Right.
All of those have PVC pipe down. So if there's been a subdivision built within the last 20 years, it's gonna have PVC pipe in it. Yeah, it's just the older areas, the established areas where the homes are 50 years old and older, they're gonna have the old type
Right.
pipe there, so.
Further discussion. Any further questions or comments from Mr. Dunn?
I really appreciate your thoroughness with this.
Excellent job. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we can keep it quiet.
Yeah, since this time, it seems pretty, I hadn't had any complaints. Have you had many complaints since
No.
October, November?
No, I'm thinking it was just that leak.
Right.
You're fixing that big leak and, hopefully that's
Is
gonna
that
be
the
the end.
Chastain property? Is that what the building you're talking about?
Yeah, the one down there. And that's when we were trying to figure out where the storm system was going, that when we looked in one of the manholes, there's pretty good torrent of water coming down through there. So,
No. You can't
what am I
hit
doing?
that. You can't close that out
I'm just
without
gonna shut it
hitting it in
off.
the spot.
Boy, Joe.
No, remove the files, okay.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Devlin, and that will take us to the approval of the City of Starkville claims docket for the fire department as of January 12th, 2012.
Excuse myself, the next two, I've got some.
All right.
Fire,
Yes, they are.
I don't have anything else fire related on the agenda.
Yeah, for
The personnel issue.
I-4, personnel 4.
My agenda's a mess.
All right. Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
A motion has been made to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for the fire department as of January 12th, 2012. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the matter?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And
Personnel 4. That's the last one.
the request for approval of temporary pay increases per personnel policy for the fire department employees assigned to temporary positions due to resignation and retirement.
Move approval.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to approve of temporary pay increases per personnel policy for fire department employees assigned to temporary positions due to resignation and retirement. Alderman Dumas, is that your, as presented, Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the matter?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that exhausts the open session portion of our agenda. Yeah, you do have two matters potentially pending for executive session. A motion to move into closed session to determine whether there's a need for executive session is in order. And since our numbers are down to 4, just The city attorney has some things that he says are pressing, correct?
Yeah, to be considered for executive session.
We can't lose anybody else.
So moved. To go into closed session.
All right, motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to move into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Alderman Dumas, that's your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Now move into a closed session without objection. I'm going to move us into a very brief recess. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Stand in recess.